Greetings, brothers and sisters. Hilaria Baldwin is back on Instaghoul, where she likes to be. You know, Hillary Baldwin. She's a white girl named Hillary who has an alter ego, a persona named Hilaria, who turned out to be hilarious. And so she posted this. I've spent the last month listening. That's great. Like, that starts out wonderful. Reflecting and asking myself, how can I learn and grow? This is, I've covered this before, and it's funny. But the reason I'm making this specific video, I have a long thing to talk about gratitude. And so this is sort of the intro into that. And, perception. But this is one of those, like she said, she spent the last month listening and reflecting, and she didn't get it right. Like, getting it right's important. This is sort of an apology. This is sort of her, mea culpa or whatever it is. And she fails, right? She fails here, right? Let's get through it. My parents raised my brother and me with two cultures, American and Spanish. This is where she doesn't get it. Like, she said this stuff here about, I've done some deep soul searching the past month. And then this is the line that shows that she really didn't do that. My parents raised my brother with two cultures, American and Spanish. And I feel a true sense of belonging to both. The way I've spoken about myself and my deep connection to two cultures could have been explained better. I should have been clear, and I'm sorry. No, you're not. I mean, you're sorry in a way like, oh my God, I've been really humiliated, embarrassed. There's no reason she should really be sorry. Like, there's no reason for her to apologize. Why apologize for this? Like, what did she do to anybody? Like, what did she do that's so offensive to anybody? Like, this is why, people get upset with the cancel culture. But what did she do that was so horribly wrong that she needs to apologize in the world the way it is now? I mean, it's been great for me. It's been like, it's been great in a lot of ways. Probably the only person she should apologize is to this guy right here. This sad sack right here. And we'll get into that because that's funny, too. This is a posed picture, right? This is just this. This is, like an art picture somebody took, some sort of, this isn't just some random Instaghoul picture. Like, this is well thought out. She's surrounded by her kids, and Alec has got a creepy black shirt on. He's sort of on the outskirts of the family looking in. And then, let me go back to this. I'm proud of the way I was raised, and we're raising our children to share the same love and respect for both. Being vulnerable and pushing ourselves to learn and grow is what we've built our community on, and I hope to get back to the supportive and kind environment we've built together. See, this is her Instaghoul page. Right here she is. She's done some sort of thing with, I don't know, doctored photo with Amy Schumer. After Amy Schumer came out and mocked her, she's got, videos here, pretentious sort of artsy videos. She's got this guru thing going on. There she is in her underwear for some reason. A lot of pictures of her kids and babies. This sort of thing. There's this handsome young man with his mask. Her in the side, she's there with him. They must be, he's wearing a tux. And, these are all like thought out and, very artsy and, there's money in this Instaghoul. There's money in her Instaghoul, profile here. But what she got wrong, what she, fails at, and again, not owing me or anybody else an apology. Like, she got exposed for something. It isn't like something where she owes people an apology. Maybe some people like she duped. Maybe she owes Alec an apology. Right? But where she gets it wrong, let me play the montage I made because that, is essential to understanding this thing.
Consider the source.
Oh, she's a white girl. Yes, I am a white girl. I am a white girl.
So, for example, my wife's on the phone with her hairdresser or her friend. She's like, really? Okay, I can't wait to see you. That's going to be great. Fantastic. What time? 12 o'clock? My wife is from Spain. And she said, blah, blah, blah.
We have very few ingredients. We have tomatoes. We have, how do you say it? Cucumbers. We have red pepper. We have, of course...
It's not easy, and I think part of it is that I'm in shape before I have a baby, and then I stay active when I'm pregnant, and I'm not trying to stay thin, I'm just trying to keep my circulation going and stretching and keep my muscle tone up, and then we're having a baby. It was a surprise, a wonderful surprise.
And one time at band camp,
it was a surprise, a wonderful surprise.
And one time at band camp,
it was a surprise, a wonderful surprise.
Well, there was a scream I heard, which is the scream that's normally reserved if there's a spider in the house on Long Island. I'm not exaggerating.
So the first part of the book is philosophy on how to live very namaste. I have 3 little babies. I live kind of a crazy life between work and them and everything else. So it's just, how to stay calm and centered and deal with things that are coming at you. Then we could talk about food.
Consider the source.
Oh, she's a white girl. Yes, I am a white girl. I am a white girl.
Here's a video where she's shilling with her fake Spanish accent. This is the, the light, she has different accents, which is, why I played my montage.
2020 has been the year of so many things, cleaning products being a main one. This is why I'm so excited that I discovered the O3 Waterworks bottle, because it turns regular tap water into aqueous ozone. It kills 99.9% of viruses and bacteria. You can throw...
So she put that in there? Like you hear that she dubbed that in there, right? Poor dubbing right there where it says, which she had a different accent when she read that.
Throw away all your other products because this is the only cleaning product that you're going to need. And the best part is that it's safe to use on everything.
See, this is one of those paid partnerships with O3 Waterworks. They do these, these celebrities chill on Instaghoul, which is, I don't know. It's not great. Like, because they make these videos like they're really into stuff, even though they're paid partnership.
For example,
so yeah, somebody has a little boo-boo on their foot. So what makes this story interesting, or what makes this story interesting to me, is the created persona of Hilaria Baldwin. There is a Hillary Baldwin, who is a real person, grew up as Hillary Baldwin, and somewhere along the line, a persona of Hilaria Baldwin got created, which is, kind of messed up, right? Psychologically speaking, whatever it is. And so, in terms of the official story, this is without factoring in MK Ultra as something which, could be present here. There's lots of maybe other explanations, deeper explanation, more truther explanations. But in terms of what we know for sure, that this person named Hillary Baldwin grew up as a mousy brunette girl in Boston with what most people would consider the true white privilege, right? This is a really white privileged person, because 70% of the population is white, and you can't say that they all have white privilege, right? 70% of American population is Caucasian, an overwhelming majority. And you can't say that all 70% have what you would consider true white privilege, like all these people who live in poverty and trailer parks, or, homeless white people. I mean, you have a spectrum. And then you have the hidden wealth that really nobody knows about. But then you have people that are, below that level of, like, whatever, the Rockefellers and people like that. But you have with Hillary Baldwin's family, her mom was a doctor, her dad was a successful businessman, and they come from what I believe to be Anglo-Saxon heritage, right? They are, very, white in terms of they come from England. When you're really talking about white people, you're talking about white people that specifically come from England, not Scotland, right? Not Ireland, not those type of English people. and not from some, not Danish or Swedish or any of these other cultures, specifically Anglo-Saxon from England. Her real name is Hilary Hayward Thomas. Like, that's as white as you could get, as white privilege as you could get in this case. Her mom was Hayward, which is a very English name, and her dad was Thomas, another very English name. Thomas is English muffins. So you have these very white parents, and she grew up in Boston. There's old money in Boston, and they had, privilege. She grew up in a $1 million house, went to a, high-end school and these things. And she was a very typical privileged white girl, mousy little white girl from Boston. And the parents were, they had the kind of money where they could vacation in Spain, right? People who vacation in Europe, they have the kind of money to fly the whole family to Europe. Mallorca, Spain, right? I can't even pronounce it right. Mallorca, right? And this place is a vacation, paradise. It's a beautiful place in Spain. Like when you go traveling. So when I was in India, we could live on, less money. My family could live on a lot less money than America, right? We had a nice 3-bedroom apartment that I was paying $500 a month for in a very, sort of upscale neighborhood because it was near the ashram and these corporate call centers in India. But traveling and living or staying for extended, vacation somewhere abroad is still expensive because of plane flights, because of whatever things you need to do, visas and things. But with India, the American currency is valued at a higher rate, 60 some odd rupees to $1. And so you go around the world, and for the most part, American dollar is valued more. So you live better in countries if you have American dollars. If you bring American dollars to some country, which you will if you're American, and you live or you stay for extended vacation, you're going to live better because the dollar has more value, except in Europe. Like we came back from India, we stayed in Boston. We had a plane mess up, and we had to stay a night in London. I'm sorry, not Boston, London. And everything was twice as expensive. I saw the downside of the way that they value currencies, right? The inequitable way that they value currencies. You've experienced this even in America if you go to New York or Boston or Chicago or LA, anywhere in California, and you realize how much more expensive everything is. Even in, America, there is places that are more expensive than others, like living in Boston, like she did, is expensive. And vacation places that you would stay, like Mallorca, Spain, I can't even, why even try, is going to be even more expensive. Expensive vacation areas in Europe. And her parents had that kind of money where they could even retire to that place, using American dollars, converting American dollars at a loss, and living in a place where, people go to vacation. Wherever a place is, there's tourism, it's just going to be more expensive to live there. And her parents had that kind of money, her family had that kind of money to vacation in those places. And so she said her parents, she grew up, her and her brother, with two cultures, but that's not true. She had a fake accent. She grew up speaking American English in a wealthy family, in an upscale family, and she had an American education, and she knows how to say cucumber, right? Like that, whatever she wants to say about two cultures, this excuse she has, or she had a bad way of explaining it, what she never got around to, which is kind of interesting, is explain how she got a fake accent. Because the way you would get an accent is if you grew up Spanish and English was your second language. But even with that, growing up in America, my dad grew up in a family with his father having a very heavy Sicilian accent. I couldn't understand my grandfather or my grandmother who had a very heavy Albanian accent. When you're like a kid and your grandparents talk to you, and then you look at your parents like, what the F did they just say? Like, I don't, I was a kid just staring at these people, old people, talking to me, and I couldn't get anything they were saying. As I got a little bit older, yeah. But when I was a kid, you could barely understand them. And my dad spoke American English, and he doesn't speak Italian or Albanian. And so that's, And so let's say Hillary Hayward Thomas, right? That's, that's a white girl name. Let's say she grew up with parents that spoke primarily Spanish, she would still have an American accent. You see this with kids that come over from every country. Their parents come over here, and they grew up in American society, American schools, and they can all speak fine with an American accent, right? Which we've seen Hillary, the Hillary Baldwin, be able to do. But somewhere all along the line, she created this character of Hilaria, who spoke with a Spanish accent, right? Because she could speak Spanish. She learned a second language. So yeah, all right, that's cool, whatever. But she didn't need to speak with a Spanish accent. So she created this character, which would be okay, right, for the most part. I mean, the whole thing's okay, in my book. I don't, I mean, I remember when I was in college, I would answer the phone with some foreign accent. Like if I didn't know who it was. And of course I didn't, because there was no way to know. But I would just answer the phone, and even at work and things, sometimes you would just, talk to somebody or pretend I had, some sort of disability, like some kind of thing like that, just to mess with people or whatever it was, right? I mean, people do things like that, I mean, it's not some horrible thing, but she pretended like it was real, like, She created this character. She changed her name to Hilaria. And I bet when she met Alec Baldwin for the first time, she spoke in a Spanish accent. And instead of being some mousy girl from Boston with a high voice, and again, there's like, she's a dime a dozen in the, New England area. I grew up in Connecticut. You see all these girls like that look like that, right? It's just, something that's there. But instead of being some mousy girl from, Boston, she became Hilaria. And I bet that Alec was into it. And I bet that became a thing. Maybe she was, whatever it was. And like one of the hilarious things about this, and we don't know all the details, but Alec Baldwin said his wife was from Spain and imitated her accent. But there were times that she spoke with an American accent. And he never figured that out. Like he's not smart enough, and he's not, he's not aware enough. He's too into himself to really think about what's going on and realizing that she had created this fake persona, and it was a character, right? It was some character, that wasn't real. And she was displaying that character all over town on social media, and then on like, the Today Show and stuff like that, Wendy Williams. And she was out doing this. Some days she would have the accent, some days she wouldn't. Her name was legally Hillary, right? Hillary Hayward Thomas, which all of this stuff is great. And she didn't come out like he's an actor, and they're all, all these people are pretentious. People put on a fake persona, right? People have like if you're in the inner city and you put on some sort of urban accent, right? People do that or whatever it might be. But then they're with like they go to college or something, and they have a different, sort of persona. People have these different personas. People have a work voice and a work persona and a persona with their, spouse. I mean, people have different ways of being with different people. I mean, this is everybody. You have a way that you are with your family, and they know you as somebody or something, right? And if you don't like what you were known as in your family, if you were the scapegoat or, whatever it is, right? Like I'm the youngest in my family. And so like, they all look at me like I'm a little kid, like whatever it is. And so you have these things, the different sides of yourselves, different versions of yourself. But she had a distinctive different version, and she made up a character that wasn't based in reality. And everybody thought she was from Spain, that she was Spanish, and she wasn't. And somebody posted it on social media, and it blew up. And we don't know, what the context of this thing is and whatever. But in terms of owning it, because it isn't about apologizing, it's just owning and being honest, which she's not being. And neither is Alec Baldwin. And that is that somehow, in some way, maybe she was dissatisfied with being Hillary Hayward Thomas and wanted to be Hilaria. And she had gone to Spain, learned to speak Spanish. And so she created this, maybe she imagined herself as this person. And she created this false persona, which turned out to be false, right? And all these people do this. Everyone creates a brand in Hollywood. All these people have brands. And she went a little far because, it wasn't based in reality. Like most people's brand, like you can pretend to be a nice person and be a horrible person, but it's not an ethnicity, right? You're faking, being a nice person, and then it comes out that you're not a nice person. But look at what happened to Ellen, right? Ellen was known as the Be Kind lady, and it turned out she was a miserable gatekeeper, and she treated people like crap at her job and things like this. And so you have to own that stuff, which Ellen really didn't do. Like, she had known what a horrible person she is and what a deception is, just like with Tom Hanks, who is, one way. Tom Hanks is got the nice guy brand, and clearly he's messed up and he's not the same person as his brand. But she could have came out and said, yeah, I just developed this persona, I don't know why, and it just took off, and I really didn't think about it, and then everyone started thinking I was Spanish because I spoke with a Spanish accent, and and I started to believe it, and Alec liked it, and whatever, and it would just go away, right? That would be honest, and whatever. And there might be a deeper story here, but she can't do that because the public humiliation of the psychological schism that's happened here in her persona. And there's just an MK stuff going on, but aside from that, it's embarrassing. Like, she is unhappy with Hillary Baldwin, with Hillary Hayward Thomas, and so she created Hilaria, and that's embarrassing. And she flat out got caught. She flat out got exposed, and it seems like she catfished Alec in some way or another. And the best part about this, which I said in that video, is that when Trump was being frog marched out of the White House, right, when Trump was being taken away, which Alec Baldwin had savored more than probably any other celebrity. Alec Baldwin imitating Trump for 4 years, posting things on Instaghoul more than any other celebrity. His dissatisfaction with Trump. And so with all of that, he was, the number one guy against Trump, right? And so, that was his passion. And right when he could have been on social media gloating and basking and, doing a victory dance, him and his wife were hiding out because she got caught being Hilaria. And so this thing was kind of a neat story on lots of different levels. She seems like an okay person. She doesn't seem like she's malicious or anything like this. And, what she did, whatever, right? She pretended to be somebody else. But in terms of 2020 and, who Alec Baldwin is and the timing of the thing with Trump, and then her inability to come clean, their inability to come clean, that she, created this character. And maybe that's the character that Alec fell in love with. Probably so. And so it's all fake, right? It's just all fake. It's imaginary. It's not real. It's something that's an act, right? It's an act. It's a brand. And that got exposed, which is, for me and what I cover here, is wonderful because she's a fake guru and, she does all this health stuff and yoga and things, but not really. If you can't accept yourself and you can't be who you are, then you really don't have the ability to teach other people any of these things, right? You can't be some sort of new age guru and be a fake, right? You can be, but you're not a real person. You're not really spiritual. You're not really, you don't have it all together. You're an absolute mess. So her example is sort of a long introduction into what I wanted to talk about this morning, which is why I say be grateful at the end of every video, to the extent that being grateful is a choice, because being grateful actually comes from the heart. It has to be, it's a heart expression. But on a mental level, on a choice level, working towards gratitude. Because when you get news, like when something happens in your life, you have a choice in how to interpret it. You go through your own mental process and how you might interpret, how you're going to distinguish something, how you're going to feel about something, how you're going to perceive something. Is it good or bad, or what is it, right? In terms of what is this thing to you? What is this news to you? So there's some big events, some, just getting punched in the gut type of events. Like, somebody that you love, especially like a young person, dies in a car accident. And somebody calls you up and says, somebody very close to you has just died. And you're just stunned. Like it's, an immediate shorting out of your system. You feel panic in your gut. You feel fear. You feel distress. You're in a state of shock. You don't even know. Like you're just lost in emotion, right? You're just gone. And you can't control your feelings. You can't control what you're going through. And so, gratitude is impossible at that moment, right? It would take years maybe before you can be grateful for something like that. So that's one level of something where you can't initially look at how you perceive something, change the way that you perceive it, because you're just out of control, right? It's just you're having a powerfully visceral reaction. But there are ways you can perceive other miseries, other things that you think are bad, as being blessings, as being something you can be grateful for. So when I first started the Heartfulness practice years ago, so the Saj Marg practice, the natural path practice of, the second book I read was The Complete Works of Ramchandra, Volume 1, and that's Babaji, the second master of the system, wrote 5 very simple books, short and simple books. And one of them was called The 10 Maxims of Saj Marg, the Heartfulness System. And maxim number 5 is the one that struck me the most at first. And he wrote, be truthful, take miseries as divine blessings for your own good, and be thankful. And so I thought about that quite a bit initially. And then as I learned, what that was, how that applied, how you applied that in your regular life and how that works spiritually. And I've talked about some skaras in recent videos, that people have impressions, things that they have to go through, that you are incarnate here until you burn off your past impressions and your samskaras, things that you have to endure. Some of them might be positive, some of them might be negative, like an addiction or something like this. But if you experience the samskara in the right way, it's like a video game, right? If you make the right choices in the video game, you get to go to the next level. And that's how life works. If you live your life in the way that you're supposed to, and you endure your miseries in the right way, then you're able to go to the next level. But we don't perceive it as that, right? We don't, if we didn't experience these things as miseries, then it wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work because we have to have the experience of it being difficult. So we can't see the spiritual benefit. We have to look at it in a way, have faith, and have, change our perception, even though we're experiencing something as miserable. And so he gave a great explanation. Babaji gave a great explanation. So these maxims have changed. Daji has, updated these maxims and made them more user-friendly for, the modern-day mind, because this book was written in the 1950s. But in terms of how it originally was written, Maxim 7 was, be not revengeful for the wrongs done by others. Take them with gratitude as heavenly gifts. And so this was his explanation, Babaji's explanation, of why to do that. So this is a little excerpt from the explanation. Truly speaking, we ourselves are the makers of fate. When we do something by applying our head and heart, we form impressions thereof at the base, which remain there in seed form till they are washed off by the effect of Bogum, the process of undergoing the effect. So I described that in terms of samskaras, right? This is something that ancient people, ancient yogis in India understood, but very few people in other religions and spiritual people really know. It's essential to know that going through these experiences is, why you're here, to burn off the effects of past impressions. And so it says, the Bogum is thus essential and indispensable. As a rule, nature wants to keep everything pure and crystal clear, just as it had originally come down in the beginning. Even the slightest coating veils its luster. This in itself being a power assumes a kind of life which we relate to our own karmas, actions. It is because we pose ourselves as the doer, this very thought forces its impressions. So the idea here is, when you think that you and God are doing something together, that you are, God's instrument and God wants you to do something and you're working together with God, then you don't form these impressions. But when you say I do and I am, and you pat yourself on the back and all these things, you think of yourself as the doer. And there's, of course, different levels of narcissism and things here. Then the impressions, you're creating your own creation, that you're doing these things without the help of God, without God participating, and your ego grows, and then you get these samskaras. You're creating your own creation, and you came down pure and crystal clear as a soul. And you were born, you started having experiences in life, and you had your own, your soul had its own plan of why you're here and what you had to accomplish. And then you start thinking of yourself, oh, I like this, I, did this, I accomplished this, and this is whatever. You start creating your own internal universe. And that has to be cleaned off. So when he talks about nature wants everything to return to its pristine condition, that's what he means here. So going back to this, it is because we pose ourselves as the doer. The very thought forces its impressions. When such thoughts get accumulated, they form numerous coils. So this is his internal reading, what he's been able to see spiritually, like an experiment, looking inside himself and other people and seeing this process. He's describing what happens on a spiritual level when you're out there building your ego and doing these things. So back to it here. When such thoughts get accumulated, they form coils. The heat of thought contained in it promotes the growth of activity, which sets form a sort of boiling action in it. According to the law of nature, everything tends to go back to its source. Since owing to the continuous contact of heat, its heaviness grows unendurably, and it becomes necessary for it to return to the origin in order to relieve itself of the weight. And so you're having all of this grossness form in your heart, all of these impressions, right? And it has a heat to it, and it has a weight to it. And your spiritual self feels it, your soul feels it, and it becomes necessary for you to clean these things off. You want to get rid of your, egotistical creation, your individual creation, and you want to go back to the pristine form in which God created you as a soul, as a spiritual essence. And so you want to get rid of this grossness and return to not only what you were initially in terms of your spiritual essence, your soul, but also you want to return to the source and be back with God, because you're, in the periphery of the world, and your spiritual essence is at the periphery, in some peripheral, externalized away from God, and you want to bring that back. You want to go back to the source. And you do that by going through an internal journey, a spiritual journey within yourself. And so going back to what he said here, things coming out from even smaller things get expanded when they find sufficient scope. The expansion is full with force according to the volume it covers, because the things which have sprung up naturally possess power. And so this is a little bit abstract, but what he's saying here is the more you start creating your own creation, the more it grows, right? There's a spiritual process he's describing here. But the more you tend to become egotistical and narcissistic and look at I did here, look at I did there, and it's just your experience, and you're no longer connected to God and sharing your experience with God or even your soul. It's just your ego having egotistical experiences. then your system becomes more and more gross, and momentum grows, and it just sort of snowballs. It's like a small little snowball becoming a giant snowball inside yourself. When this is the case, it now turns another phase and begins to cover all the available space, affecting even the layers reserved for the Bogum. This leads to the commencement of sufferings. And so now you have to start burning these things off, right? Now that you've contaminated this in this pure, pristine internal world inside your heart with all of this heavy grossness, now it has to relieve itself. Now it has to be cleaned off in the form of sufferings. And so this is the spiritual explanation. I have taken up this subject very briefly, though every point in it could be further illustrated separately, which it is in various talks by the third master of the system, and Dodgy expands on this in various videos and things, talking about this and in talks. And so this has been expanded in the heartfulness literature, but this is enough right here. The circumstances for this process of Bogum, which may be from internal causes or external, are thus created. But here's the part I really like. This is the part that really struck me. And so he says, the external help comes in the form of suffering caused by the wrongs done by others, against which the people generally poison their thought on account of their ignorance. This is very improper because this action, having helped the process of purification, has in fact put you under a sense of obligation. When this is the case, the work done through an external agency, it may be any, has in other words rendered the function of a true friend. This may seem to be an uncommon approach, since this basic philosophy was never taken into account before, for the reason that it came simply out of in the form of advice to take everything as coming from the Lord, so that the feelings of resentment may not arise and one may not lose nobility of character. Thus it is now quite evident that everything that comes to us from our ultimate good, for our ultimate good, may it be from any medium, fills our heart with delight and promotes in us a sense of gratitude. It's just one of my favorite passages from this literature, going back to the original maxim, be not revengeful for the wrongs done by others, take them with gratitude as heavenly gifts. And so what's brilliant about this is a kind of a new explanation, because you'll see in many religions or spiritual whatever movements, they'll say, well, you should take all these miseries as being from God, but not with some scientific, spiritual science. It's a spiritual science, the study of what happens on the inside world, your internal universe. And Babaji had, a remarkable spiritual life in which he was able to see all these things happening on a spiritual level. I mean, this was the major part of his genius, understanding how material events play out internally and being able to explain them. And again, it's a little bit abstract, and it takes a little bit of thinking. I've read this thing many times, probably 10 or 15 times, right? This explanation. But I'm always sort of blown away by it, because there's an internal process, like a mechanism, right? A machine that's within your heart, and it's cleaning out something, like you're introducing a cleaning process into something, right? You're scrubbing something, you're cleaning it, and a big part of the heartfulness system is about cleaning a person's heart. And God has created a cleaning process when you create your own egotistical creation, your own creation of your ego inside yourself, that there is this cleaning process, naturally activated cleaning process, to bring you back to your pristine form, your pristine, original condition as a pure soul. And these maxim, the other one again, reading the maxim 5, be truthful, take miseries as divine blessings for your own good, and be thankful. That you're not going to experience these things as good. And your, mental, whatever you believe mentally, when you lose something, when something's being taken away, something is, dear to you, or something that you need or you want to have in your life, and that's removed in one way or another, there's a sense of loss, a sense of victimization, there's a sense of pain and suffering, right? You're miserable because you have this perception of enjoying something and it being taken away from you, or something that you didn't want to happen, or something you dreaded to happen. It was specifically something that you constructed in your own perception would be a disaster. But when it happens, it cleans out all kinds of things inside of you that are blocking your spiritual path and are a weight, right, are heavy inside your internal system. And I've experienced this through the Heartfulness Method. I've talked about how I had this bitterness towards God that came out through all kinds of negative experiences in my family's trip to India, and the divorce and just all kinds of disappointments and things that went along with all of that, right? My mom dying, the third master of the Heartfulness system dying, all these things sort of converging at one time, and me feeling like I followed a path and God led me down a path and then sort of seemed to screw me over, right? Like, hey, joke's on you. And I, felt resentment in these things, a bitterness towards God that I had from a past existence. And I was able to use the Heartfulness system, the cleaning method in the Heartfulness system, and allow it to be removed. Once I knew what it was, and once it was gone, I couldn't believe how much better I felt. And so all these things that were miseries, that were difficult, were actually beneficial for me. Like, I accepted them as being beneficial because they were, right? But I didn't perceive them, when I experienced it, it felt horrible, right? And so, this is kind of a brilliant way of understanding that one's perception, the way that we perceive things, we think something's bad, it's undesirable, but what is it doing for me spiritually? And if you can have a positive attitude and be grateful for it, and I've, since having positive experiences at the end of the thing, right? Something resolves itself, right? Something begins, and your initial perception of it is, oh, this is going to be bad. And it is bad. It feels bad, at least at that time. But then as it plays out, and then, other things develop, something ends, it's the ending of something, it's the death of something. And then as it plays out, there's gratitude at the end of it. You realize it wasn't bad at all, it was a blessing. And so this is one of the, the maxims, one of the foundational building blocks of a successful heartfulness practice, is understanding things that you perceive as miseries are really divine blessings. Do you understand this? Your initial emotional reaction to something is, wow, this is going to suck. And you can say this is going to suck, right? I mean, you're experiencing this as a misery at first, but then when you say, all right, well, I'm just going to let this thing play out. This is the effort that you have to put in. Okay, it seems like a misery. It's undesirable. It sucks. It's not something I want to happen. But it's just at the beginning. I've just heard the news, and this could be something like Biden being elected as president or whatever. And then you say, I'm going to let it play out. Also, you're going to look inside and see how it affects you inside. And that's the important piece, because your material circumstances will probably get worse, at least initially, and they may get worse at the end of the thing. But how do you feel inside? Are you able to connect to God in a deeper level? Do you feel better? Are you happier, right? Because at the end of the thing that I had, this bitterness towards God, this cleaning I went through, there's a number of cleanings I've gone through the Heartfulness system, and I've always felt better afterwards. And after that specific cleaning, it was like I was making more serotonin. I think I am. Like something happened internally that had an effect on my, just being happier, more joyful person. And it was I could never go back. Like the weight of it now that it's gone, like I didn't know the burden I was carrying around until it was removed. And so, yeah, a lot of sucky things happened, and they were sucky, and people who contributed to them, they have their own suckiness as well, but they were doing me a favor. And that's one of the brilliant aspects of these teachings, that what you think is, well, you're perceiving something, And then you feed into it, right? You feel bad. I'm victimized. Why is God doing this to me? Why is the world so sucky? Why am I having to go through this? And then it makes it worse, and then you're just creating more lies inside yourself, right? Because you're not seeing the benefit that this is, why this was given to you by God. It wasn't just that God is messing with you and just be happy because God gave it to you and just suck it up, pumpkin, right? It's not like that at all. You're actually experiencing something inside yourself where it's a blessing. So externally, it's a misery. In your life, it's a misery, but internally, on the spiritual realm of existence, it's a blessing. And this is something that everyone has to, come to terms with in their life because, there's reasons why everybody experiences miseries. It's part of life. So you might as well find a way to make them good, because it's going to change the way that you experience your experience. You experience your life. You understand this? They might as well be good because, you're going to go through them. You might as well work at it. You might as well find a way to perceive things in a better way. Because you can be bitter and miserable. Something can happen to you and it could just wreck your life. I mean, that happens to people all the time. It just devastates them. They never recover from something psychologically, in terms of their attitude, in terms of the way that they perceive the world. And they just remain a victim. They're miserable, whatever it is, maybe even suicidal, and they just, and they never let it go. And then they come back and they have to do it again. So it's not like they, die and it's over. They have to repeat it. It's not, this is one of the great things to understand about past lives and future lives, that it's like anything else. You have to graduate. You have to graduate from human life. This is an experience your soul has to graduate from, just like a video game. To move through the next level and win the game, there is a process, and the process is different but the same for everybody. It's different on the, in the game itself and the perception of reality that you're going through. But on a spiritual level, it's the same, right? The process is the same, that you have to reach a certain spiritual level to leave this video game, to leave planet Earth. And until you do, you're going to have as many lives as it takes. And if you're going to fail at each life, the failings get worse, the addictions get worse. You commit suicide one life, then you come back and the tendencies are going to be there to make you commit suicide again. And each time that you do that, it becomes harder and harder for you. You understand this? It becomes harder and harder for you because the weight of your spiritual samskaras, these patterns, these cyclical patterns that you go through from life to life, become such a weight on you that you can't experience enough boga to cleanse yourself of all these things. And you continuously fail because you just can't. It's just, you run out of juice. You run out of, love, God's love and things. Because your love bank gets depleted. So the Heartfulness system has been given to help expedite and clean off these samskaras. Like Babaji said, that a person has to experience the samskara, the impression, but he can change a knife into a pin. So it's, if someone had a samskara for getting stabbed, he could change a knife into a pin. And so you can experience these samskaras at a much, less intense rate, and your soul is getting propped up by the energy, the transmission that's being given. I mean, this is a free system that, that has been given by God to help, human beings have gone so gross and so, out of whack with their own creations and so far away from connecting and partnering with God that he's given this system. This is sort of, I don't know what you would call it, right? An intervention to help people cleanse off all this grossness from lifetimes and, just the hedonistic lifestyle that people have now. It's a grossness factory. I mean, think about how people are like, oh, I did this, look at what I did, look at my accomplishments, and what they're saying inside themselves, right? Look, I got a college degree, look, I got a great job, look at the car I got, look at this thing I did, look at how great I am, look at the movie I made, celebrity. Look at the, election I just won, all these things. And they are, creating more and more grossness because they are thinking, I am, I did, I do, right? I accomplished, I. We live in the time of I, right? And the I in the center of the capstone of the pyramid. It's just, a different sort of I, but it's the same thing. It's a time of egoism. And because of that, people are creating so much grossness. And now there's been a system given to help, expedite the cleaning process and prop them up with God's love through the transmission, because people get depleted as they go through life and experience miseries. When your heart gets broken and, all these things befall you, it's like you just lose your innocence and your prana, your energy gets drained and you're just bankrupt and you just can't do it, right? You just, your life gets used up like in a video game, and you're marching through life, you get in your 40s and you're all used up, right? And so this is the system that was given for this period of time, and working on one's perception, especially now when everything's collapsing, is, one of the remedies for it. It's one of the ways that you can contribute, a person can contribute to their own spiritual evolution by having a positive attitude in the face of all the bad things that are happening right now and will continue to happen, until a better system is, put in place. That this old system is removed and cleansed from the human experience, and then there's a time of deprivation and chaos and, people just flipping out. And then a new system comes along to take its place that operates on a higher level. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.